All right, so you are now ready to jump into Monogame. So what you need to do is we're actually going to need to log into Visual Studio 2015, and this is in a couple of different locations. So mine, you can see, is on my desktop. I purposely saved it there so it's easy to access, but if you click on the computer science folder, inside of that folder, you will see Visual Studio 2015, and that is what you need to click on. So you click on your Visual Studio 2015, odds are it won't pop right in unless you've been on Visual Studio 2015 on that particular computer before. So what you'll need to do is when you get in there and you need to select what you're going to log in for, you're going to just do the general development settings. You don't need to do anything specific. I will show you how to access the C# code, but just general development settings is fine. And then it may take a couple of minutes to kind of get you all set up. So once you get in there, this is what you should see next. You should see this environment and you should be able to click on new project. So if I click onto new project, you can see it starting to initialize templates and it logs in here. Now, if I'm looking for Visual Studio 2015, or I'm looking for, C#, odds are right now, if you click on C# and scroll, you may be able to find Monogame, but if you can't, go up here into this little search bar. And in this little search bar, you can type Monogame, and it should all pop up. And if at this point you aren't seeing these, you should actually stop and let me know, because then I can help you find it. I have the templates on my computer, so I can make sure that those find their way into the correct file. So make sure you can see this. Click on Windows Project. Before you press OK, please note that down here where it says name, this is your one chance to name your document. If you do not name this file here, you will not be able to save it. So this would be an excellent time to name it, because you'll see it names it Game 1, and it'll just be Game 1, Game 2, Game 3, Game 4, so on and so forth. So this is an excellent time to name it, and maybe name it My First Game or My First Program, or whatever you want to label it, or you can label it Monogame 1, whatever you want to name it, something that you will remember. So I'm going to call it My First Program. That's what I'm going to call it. And if I press OK, it will now automatically set me up with the Monogame setting. So right now you see nothing, and sometimes students freak out. But if you look over here off to the right-hand side, these are all of your files associated with your program. And this is why you can't change the name from here on out, because that name, whatever you named it, is saved in many, many different locations. But if you click on game1.cs, you will see the basic framework, the basic skeleton of your program appear. And so I'm going to zoom in a little bit and kind of walk through what you're seeing. This up here, these are the things that are already built in to automatically use from Microsoft XNA. You can see you have some input, you have some graphics that are built in. Then from here, you can see all these little negative plus signs on the side. This allows you to scoop up some of your code. And what I like to do is, I know what these comments are, but I like to scoop up some of the comments. So I tend to go down and scoop up this section. And if you do that, what you'll start to notice, if you scoop up all those summary sections, you are essentially left, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, with 5 main methods that are built into Monogame. So you can see here's the beginning, here's your program, public class 1, this is where you're writing your game. You're bringing in what's called a sprite batch and your graphics, and I'll talk about those later on. And then from here, you have some built-in methods, and you can see right here is your initialize method, right here. It's your load content method, your unload content method, your update method, and down here is your draw method. So those are automatically built in so that you can use them. And that's actually where we write our code, is inside these 5 methods. So do not delete any of this out. Don't delete it. You need it, and be very, very careful not to delete any of the brackets. You do need these later on down the road. So I want to go over a couple of things in Monogame now that you're logged in. First, you'll see in green, you can see that we have comments. So if you press the control button and you use a little circle on your mouse, you can zoom in. Anything in green is a comment. So that is something that your program will not read. The computer doesn't read that, it ignores it. Those are for the user. So you will be expected to comment. There are 2 ways to comment. The first is to just put 2 slashes and write your words after. Those are single line comments. You can also at the beginning, so for example, right up here, if If I wanted to add in some comments before my program, I'd put /star, and then at the end, /, and I can write comments all along in here. So make sure that your / is right next to that star, otherwise it will comment out your whole game. So it's /star, then it will automatically put these stars in there for you, and now all of this can be a comment. It's commented out. So you start it with a /star and you end it with a */. And those are your comments. These are for multi-line comments. You will, and I'm going to show you this slide so you remember it, you will be required to comment all of your code. So get in the habit of that. We will do it as we program. You will do it as you program. Comments are important. They are how you find your errors later on. They are how others read your code. They are how I help you if you're having issues with your code. You need to have comments. You need to, because even if you think you know what that code means, one day from now, 1 week from now, 1 month from now, 1 year from now, whenever you're looking at this again, if you don't have comments, you will eventually forget what they mean, and then you'll struggle a little bit. So as I said, we're using the C# programming language. It should be similar in a way to some of you. If you've programmed with C++ and Java, it has some similarities there. For those of you that have only programmed in Intro to Visual Basic, please note that we end every line of code with a semicolon. So you'll see that as we start coding in our next project, that the semicolon signifies the end of a line, and you will need to do that every single time. If you don't have a semicolon, your computer assumes that that instruction continues on to the next line. That's where it'll find the next chunk, and it won't actually know to skip to the next action or the next step without that semicolon. So you can see that we have 5 main methods in that skeleton that I showed you, and I'm going to walk you through right now. So this would be another excellent time to take some notes so you know what these methods are for. You will get the hang of it later on as we continue talking about Monogame, but you're going to want to have a solid understanding now so when you start coding, you know why we're not currently using a method or why we are. So first you saw the initialize method. This method runs one time, and it runs at the beginning of the game. And what it will do is it will essentially set up certain variables where they should be every time your game starts. So if you want your scores to always start at 0, or you want your rectangle to always start in a specific location, or you want your number of lives available to start at 10, you can initialize them all here. This will run once at the very, very beginning. And then from there, it doesn't run again. It's basically how you initialize things at the beginning of your program if you want them to make sure they are set up right away. So this will run first right at the beginning. So that's our first method. We will use this, especially when we start looking at things like putting images and text into our program. The second method you need to know is the load content method, and very much like the initialize method, this runs once per game, and it allows you to load all of the content into your game. So it's all the things that aren't built in. So anything like a picture or text or a sound, or anything that you want to load into your game. Any type of content needs to be done through the load content method. And we will use this heavily when we do things like fonts and music and pictures and things like that. These need to be loaded in via the load content method. And again, it runs once per game, and just like initialize, runs at the very, very beginning of your game. The unload content is called once per game as well, and will unload any unneeded content from the game. I will be honest with you ahead of time, we won't utilize this one in this course, but it does have a purpose. It allows you to unload things that are unneeded at some point in your game. And again, this will only run once per game as well. Now, the update method, this will quickly become one of your best friends along with the draw method that we'll talk about next. This update method is where the main portion of your code is run from. So this is called 60 times per second. So it runs every 60th of a second, and it has to run that fast, and it needs to run over and over and over so it can continue to update all of the variables, all of the objects, all of those important components of your game. So if you wanted to change your counter, it needs to be done through the update method. If you want to change where your picture is currently located, it's done through the update method. Any sort of change occurs in the update method. So the bulk of your code, of your program, will go here. This is where any component in your game, when you're detecting collision, when you have a sound, anything that is changing, if you're trying to get input from the user and the input is changing, Anything that is changing, anything that needs to be updated goes